The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the crack in the ceiling. That specific hairline fracture that looked like a bolt of lightning frozen mid-strike. I knew it intimately. I had read at it for hours during the worst nights of my life, memorizing its jagged path across the popcorn texture. My eyes were wet. My face was wet. I reached up and touched my cheek, and my fingers came away streaked with mascara and salt that I was crying. I was still crying. But I was in my apartment on Maple Street, not in the cold, sterile waiting room of St. Mary's Hospital. I was on my own lumpy mattress, wrapped in the worn quilt Grandma had sewn for my 16th birthday. And the clock on my nightstand read 7:43 a.m., not 11:17 p.m. The date read June 3rd, not December 17th. I sat up so fast my head spun. My hand flew to my phone, my thumb trembling as I swiped it open. The Calendar app confirmed it. June 3rd, 2024. I was 25 years old. I was 32 years old. I was both and neither. The memories crashed over me like a wave that had been building for 7 years, finally breaking. The sham of a marriage to Mark, his slow but methodical draining of my trust fund. My mother's constant demands for loans she never intended to repay. My sister S.A. Ross' poisonous whispers that turned every family gathering into a battlefield. And then, the ultimate betrayal. The one that had left me bankrupt and broken in that hospital room, watching my own mother sign away the last piece of my grandmother's estate while I was too weak to lift my head off the pillow. I looked at my hands. They were young. The veins weren't prominent. The skin wasn't papery from months of forced starvation and stress. I had 7 years of life back. 7 years of mistakes I would not make again. The sound of my phone buzzing jolted me. A text message from my mother. Elena. I read at the screen, at the 3 little dots that bobbed as she typed her usual morning diatribe. When the message finally came through, it was exactly what I remembered. Honey, I know you just got your monthly disbursement from the trust. I need a little help with the redener. He's threatening to put a lien on the house. Can you send me $3,000 by noon? Don't tell your sister, you know how she gets. Love you, Mom. The same lie. The same manipulation. The same redener who had been paid off 6 months ago. The same secret account she was funneling money into for S.A. Ross' business, a boutique that would fail spectacularly within its first year. I read the message again, and instead of the familiar pang of guilt, I felt something else. A cold, quiet CLA righty that I typed back. No. Then I blocked her number. The first hour after my rebirth was a frenzy of action. I didn't allow myself time to mourn or to plan long-term. I just moved. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard road. I logged into every account I had access to. My personal checking account, my savings, the joint account I read with Mark that was supposed to be for household expenses. And then, the Charleston family trust. My grandmother's legacy. The last thing my father's mother had left behind before she passed, a hefty sum meant to support her granddaughters. But it was me who had the day-to-day control, the disbursement sent to my name, my account. It was my responsibility to manage, and I had been a fool with it. I looked at the transaction history. The money I had sent to Mark last week to cover his business expansion. The money I had sent to my mother to cover S.A. Ross' failed CAR down payment. The money I had frittered away on private therapy sessions for my husband, sessions designed to fix his anger issues I had been convinced were my fault. The pattern was clear. I had been an ATM wrapped in a wife's skin. A bank with legs that everyone in my family had lined up to withdraw from. That I stopped the automatic transfer to the joint account. I changed the password on the trust portal. I set up a new, separate account in a different bank with a different password, a different email, and a different security question that no one in my family could guess. I drained what was left of the joint account into my personal savings, $312 Rs. It was insulting. It was a pittance of what Mark had taken. But it was a start. By 9 a.m., the text route pouring in from Mark, "Babe, did you transfer the money for the renovation? Babe, the contractor is here. Evelyn, please call me back." His tone shifted from sweet to agitated to panicked within the span of 30 minutes. I didn't answer. I just watched the notifications pile up. This was the same man who would eventually convince me to liquidate half the trust to buy him out of a mountain of debt he had hidden from me, a debt that turned out to be for a gambling habit I had naively assumed was harmless. I remembered the last time I saw him. It was in the hospital room, after my mother had already siphoned the last of my emergency fund. He came to see me, but he came to serve me divorce papers. He told me I was a sinking ship, and he couldn't afford to go down with me. His new girlfriend, a yoga instructor he'd been seeing for a year, was waiting in the car outside. I was too weak to sign. My arms felt like lead. So he had grabbed my hand, pressed the pen into my fingers, and guided my signature onto the dotted line. The ink was still drying on the page when he walked out. Now, I was in my apartment, looking at the chipped nail polish on my fingers and the very alive text messages on my screen. I didn't feel sadness. I felt the cold, sharp edge of a plan forming. At 10:30 a.m., my sister Sarah called. I didn't answer. She called again. I let it ring. Then she texted. "Mom is freaking out. She said you blocked her. What is wrong with you? She needs money for the GA dinner. Some of us have actual jobs and can't come over there to babysit your meltdown." The venom was there, even in the text. Sarah, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who had inherited my grandmother's looks while I got her sense of responsibility. I remembered what Sarah had done to me. She had taken my mother's side in the legal battle over the remains of the trust. She had lied in court, claiming I was unstable and had squandered the money myself. Her testimony had sealed my fate. I didn't block Sarah. I just put my phone face down on the counter and route making coffee. I needed to think clearly. I needed to be strategic. This wasn't just about revenge. Revenge was a hot flash. This was a long, slow burn. I wanted to watch them all destroy themselves with the same weapons they had used on me. Greed. Envy. Entitlement of my plan route to crystallize. My grandmother had built her fortune from nothing. A textile factory in the Midwest, shrewd investments in real estate, and a portfolio that had made her a very wealthy woman. But it wasn't just money. She had left me her legacy of quiet power. I had been too weak to wield it before. But I was done being weak. Mark walked through the door at 1:15 p.m. I hadn't given him a key, but he had one. He had had one since we moved in together 3 years ago. He saw me sitting at the kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in front of me, my eyes clear and focused. Evie, thank God. He rushed over, his face flushed. He was handsome, I had always thought so. Tall, with sandy hair and blue eyes that could look so sincere. "What is going on?" The contractor is furious. He's demanding payment. I told him you'd just forgotten, that you were having one of your days. It was the little digs I hated most. One of your days. As if my anxiety was a performance meant to inconvenience him. I haven't forgotten anything, Mark. My voice was surprisingly steady. I'm not paying for the renovation. He blinked, disbelief clouding his features. What? But we discussed this. The expansion is key for the business. We need it. I'm not paying for your business expansion, Mark. I'm not paying for anything. The whiplash from sweet to angry was instantaneous. What are you talking about, Evie? It's our money. It's been our money for 3 years. No, Mark. I stood up, feeling the height of my 5'4" frame for the first time in years. It was my grandmother's money. And I was a fool to let you treat it as an unlimited credit CA road. He laughed. Aha RSH, dismissive BARK, oh, this is rich. You having a breakdown. You always get weird when you read those self-help books. You think you have some kind of sudden awakening. You're a housewife with a trust fund, Evelyn. Don't get it twisted. Without my business expansions, you'd be sitting in a CA Boa road box in a year. The trust isn't as big as you think it is. I smiled. It was a thin, humorless smile. It's bigger than you think, Mark. And it's no longer accessible to you. I canceled the automatic transfer to our joint account. I changed the password on the trust portal. Your name isn't on that account. It never was. His face went pale. Then red. I had hit the bullseye. The money was the only reason he had stayed. The money was the only reason he had ever been interested. He was a pretty, charming man who had found a lonely, insecure woman with a fat inheritance, and he had bled it dry. But I was an empty well now. And the creditors would soon start calling. Change it back, Evelyn. His voice was low, a threat. No. He stepped forward, and for the first time, a genuine spike of fear went through me. I remembered the hospital bed. I remembered the weakness. But I also remembered that he had never actually hit me. He had thrown things. He had broken doors. But he had never made contact. It was a line he didn't cross, and I knew why. He was smart enough to know that a physical SCAR could get him caught. But financial manipulation was invisible, it was deniable. So I stood my ground. You have 2 hours to pack your things and get out, I said. That he read at me, a vein pulsing in his temple. You can't do this. This is my home, too. Your name isn't on the lease. I signed it before we got married. It's my appointment. You a guest. I was amazed at how calm I sounded. I was doing this. I was actually doing this. His hands balled into fists. Where am I supposed to go? I put all my money into the expansion. That money is gone, Evelyn. I have nothing. That's not my problem, I said, the words feeling like pure catharsis. That's your problem. You should have planned better. He went into the bedroom, and I heard him opening drawers, violently stuffing things into a duffel bag. He slammed the door to the closet. I sat down at the kitchen table again, my hands shaking slightly on the formica surface. But I felt no regret. I felt the first stirrings of power. It was unfamiliar, but it was intoxicating. When he came out with a bag slung over his shoulder, he was dripping with spite. You'll be sorry, Evelyn. You'll see. I'm not the only one who's been leeching off you. Your mom calls me 3 times a week asking for money. Your sister's boutique is a disaster. I know what they've taken. And they'll turn on you. You're throwing away the only ally you had. An ally who stole from me, I said. Get out, Mark. He walked to the door, and just before he left, he turned and gave me the most chilling look. You're going to fail. You can't do anything on your own. That's why you gave me all the power in the first place. You'll be crawling back to me in a month. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed through the appartement, and I was alone. For the first time in 3 years, I was truly alone. And the silence was beautiful. I didn't cry. I didn't wallow. I pulled out my grandmother's old jewelry box from the top of the closet. It was a simple mahogany box, but inside was a key. The key to a safety deposit box at the Wells Fa Rigaud downtown. The key to my grandmother's final, secret gift. She had given it to me on her deathbed, a whispered secret while my mother and S.A. Ra were arguing over a vase in the next room. I had never used it. I had been too SCA red. But now, I looked at the brass key, and I made a decision. It was time to go to the bank. That the safety deposit box felt heavier than it should have. It was small, metal, and ordinary, but as I slid it out of the wall and set it on the small table in the private viewing room, I knew it held my grandmother's last secret. The key turned smoothly, and the lid opened with a soft click. Inside was a single leather-bound notebook. I had expected jewelry or stocks, but this was just a plain, worn journal. It had a faint scent of her perfume, lavender and something woody. I opened it carefully, my fingers tracing the familiar loops of her handwriting. She had always written in cursive, so elegant and precise. The journal entries began 20 years ago. Elena has asked for another loan, the first entry read. She says it's for S.A. Ross school fees, but I suspect it's to fund a new CAR. I've told her no. I will not subsidize a habit of entitlement. I have decided to create a separate fund for Evelyn. She is the only one who understands the value of $1. She is the only one who remembers the taste of struggle. Elena is already forgetting that she grew up in a trailer park. She thinks the money came from nowhere. I flipped through the pages. My grandmother had chronicled everything. Every demand my mother had made, every lie my sister had told, every time they had tried to manipulate her for more. She had watched them, the same way I had watched them, but she had had the wisdom and the distance to see the pattern clearly. She knew Elena was creating a monster in S.A. Ra. She knew S.A. Ra was being groomed to resent me, to see me as a rival for the family's goodwill and money. The final entry was dated a week before she passed away. They are recircling like vultures. Elena is already planning how to spend the inheritance. S.A. Ra is trying to get me to change the will in her favor, promising to take care of me. I see the greed in their eyes. I have done what I can. I have put Evelyn in charge of the trust. I have left her a set of instructions. She is a clever girl. She will figure it out. There were no instructions in the journal, only observations. It was a blueprint of my family's dysfunction. It was a record of all their schemes and all their lies. It was the proof I had been missing, the validation I needed. My grandmother hadn't been blind. She had been biding her time. And she had passed the knowledge to me, hoping I would use it wisely. I closed the journal and put it in my bag. The sky outside the bank window had turned from gray to a brilliant, clear blue. The weight of my grandmother's journal in my bag gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I knew what I had to do. I had to set the trap. The first phase of my plan was simple: cut off all financial support and watch the panic spread. I knew exactly how my family would react. My mother would go to S.A. Ra. S.A. Ra would call Mark, in his new, desperate state, would try to find another way to exploit me. The pressure would build, and they would make mistakes. Greedy people always did. I went home and started making calls. I called the private investigator I had used in my previous life, a man named Frank who specialized in financial forensics. He was expensive, but he was worth every penny. I told him what I needed. Full financial audits on my mother, my sister, and my soon-to-be ex-husband. I wanted to know where every single penny had gone. I wanted to know about hidden accounts, secret businesses, and secret debts. I wanted to find the rot at the core. Are you sure about this, Evelyn? Frank asked, his voice gruff and a little skeptical. This kind of digging can stir up a lot of trouble. I'm counting on it, I said that the next day. I checked my phone and saw I had 23 missed calls from my mother, 17 from SA and 12 from Mark. They were all frantic. It was beautiful. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sent a group message to all 3 of them. Effective immediately, all financial support from the Charleston Family Trust is terminated. I have retained control of the funds and will be managing them directly. For any questions, please direct them to my lawyers. I didn't have lawyers. But they didn't know that the responses were immediate. SA sent back a string of expletives, accusing me of being selfish, of being a spoiled brat, of not understanding the real world. My mother called and left a voicemail that was a masterclass in passive-aggressive manipulation. Evelyn, honey, I'm so worried about you. You're not yourself. Is it a man? Is it a tumor? Please, just call me back. I need you to be okay. And I need the money. The GA Redenner is going to take the house. Mark was the quietest. He sent a single text. You're playing a dangerous game, Evie. You don't have the stomach for it. He was wrong. I had the stomach. I had the appetite that I knew the first domino to fall would be SA. Her boutique, La Belle, was an exercise in financial insanity. She had a prime location in a ritzy part of town, designer clothes no one wanted, and staff she couldn't afford. My mother had been subsidizing it for months, but the money had been coming from me. Now, that well was dry. The rent was due at the end of the month. I drove by the boutique on Monday morning. It looked as pretentious as I remembered. A sign in the window advertised a summer sale, but the clothes were still priced like they were made of gold. SA was inside, hunched over a laptop, a deep frown etched onto her face. She looked older than she should have. The stress was aging her. I didn't go in. I didn't need to gloat. I just wanted to observe. And I saw it. The fear. It was in the way she glanced at the door every time a potential customer walked by, the way she chewed on her bottom lip. My mother was right. SA had always been the fragile one, but she had also been the most vicious. She would do anything to protect her fragile ego. And that made her dangerous. 2 days later, I received a letter from a process server. Mark was suing me for spousal support, claiming he was entitled to half of my trust fund. It was a bold move, but it was also a foolish one. He didn't have a leg to stand on. The trust was a pre-marital asset, and he had signed a prenuptial agreement. But he was using it as a weapon, a way to drag me through the mud and drain my legal funds. It was the kind of petty, vindictive move I had come to expect from him. My mother called again, this time with a new tactic. Evelyn, your father's health is failing. The doctor says he needs a new specialist, but our insurance won't cover it. If you love your father, you'll send me the money for the appointment. I swear it's the last time. The lie was so obvious it was almost laughable. My father had left us when I was 12. He was living in Florida with a new family, and he hadn't spoken to my mother in 10 years. There was no health crisis. There was no specialist. It was just another ploy. Where is he? I asked, my voice flat. What? Where is he? Which hospital? I'll come visit him. I'll bring a bouquet. There was a pause, a long, awkward stretch of silence. Then she sputtered. It's in Nevada. It's very private. You wouldn't want to intrude. You just said he's dying. I think I'd want to say goodbye. She hung up on me. I smiled. The lies were getting sloppy. I met with Frank on Thursday. He had the audit results. They were more damning than I had expected. My mother had been siphoning money from the trust for years, but not just for the GA Redenner or for SA Ross loans. She had a separate account in a different state where she was hiding the money, a retirement fund she was building while she pretended to be broke. She had been doing it since my father left, prep a ring for a future where she didn't have to rely on anyone. The audacity of it was stunning. She had been robbing me to secure her own golden years. S.A. Ross' finances were worse. The boutique was hemorrhaging money. She had been using a lot of the money to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford, expensive dinners, designer vacations, and a secret wardrobe she was hiding from her husband. She was in debt. Deep, crippling debt. She was on the verge of bankruptcy. Mark was the worst. He wasn't just gambling. He had taken out a massive loan, using my name as a co-signer without my knowledge. The loan was for $300,000, and it was due in a month. He had defaulted on the payments, and the bank was getting ready to start the foreclosure process on our house. Our house. The one I had bought with my money. The one he was trying to claim as his. "What do you want to do with this information?" Frank asked. "Nothing yet," I said. "I'm going to wait." Waiting was the hardest part. I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to call them and scream at them. But I knew the best revenge was to let them destroy themselves. So I went to the gym. Root eating right. I worked on a new manuscript, a collection of short stories about strong women who take control of their lives. It was cathartic and productive. But the tension was still there. It was an undercurrent, a hum beneath my skin. I was a bomb waiting to go off, and my family were the wires I was slowly, rooting to cut. The turning point came on a Tuesday. I was at the grocery store, picking up a few things, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You don't have to be alone. I know what they did to you. Let me help." I dropped the phone. I read the text again. The phrasing was strange. "I know what they did to you." Who was this? Was it someone from my past, someone from my grandmother's past? I didn't recognize the number. I didn't respond immediately. I waited until I got to my car. Then I typed back. "Who is this?" The response came back within seconds. A friend. A friend who remembers the original Evelyn. The one who used to be strong. Before Mark. Before Elena. Before Sarah. My blood ran cold. This person knew me. Knew me before. They knew the girl who had graduated valedictorian, the girl who had written poetry, the girl who had dreams of becoming a writer. The girl I had been before my mother had convinced me I was a failure, before Sarah had told me I was ugly, before Mark had told me I was boring. Who are you? I typed it. "My name is Daniel. Daniel Rooter. I was your neighbor. Before you moved out of the house on Ashland Street. I don't know if you remember me. I was just a kid. Daniel Rooter." The name sparked a flicker of recognition. I had grown up on Ashland Street. There was a boy who lived a few doors down. He had been a skinny kid with big glasses and a love of comic books. I used to tutor him in English. He had been sweet, shy. I hadn't thought about him in years. "I remember you," I typed. "You used to call me Miss Charleston even though I was only a year older." "That's me," he texted back. "I'm a lawyer now. I work for a firm that specializes in trust litigation. I saw your case come up in the system. I know about the lawsuit Mark is filing. I want to help you fight him. Pro bono." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. I had been trying to do this alone. I had been trying to be strong. But the weight of it all, the constant pressure, the constant vigilance, was exhausting. Having an ally, a genuine ally, was like finding water in a desert. But a small, cynical voice in the back of my head piped up. The voice was my grandmother's, I think. It whispered, "Don't trust anyone too quickly. The world is full of wolves." I was about to type a cautious response when a second text came through. It was from my mother. It was a photo. A photo of my grandmother's headstone. There was a note on the photo. She would be so ashamed of you, Evelyn. You're breaking this family apart. I'm going to tell the whole town what you've done. I'm going to get a lawyer myself. I'm going to take everything. The threat was so brazen, so utterly detached from reality, that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My mother didn't have a lawyer. She didn't have any money for a lawyer. She was bluffing. But the photo was a reminder. The war wasn't just about money. It was about legacy. It was about my grandmother's memory. And I wasn't going to let anyone desecrate it. That I turned my attention back to Daniel's message. I accept your help, I typed. Meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street tomorrow at 10 a.m. I put my phone in my purse and route the car. The engine hummed to life. I drove home, the city lights blurring in the rain-slicked streets. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. Daniel Reuter was not the skinny kid with glasses anymore. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a sharp jaw and a calm, steady gaze. He wore a simple gray suit and no tie, and his dark hair was cropped short, but I could see the ghost of the boy I used to know in the way he smiled. It was a warm smile, an open smile that made you feel like he was genuinely happy to see you. It was Dissa Remang. Miss Charleson, he said, standing up from his table at the back of the coffee shop. It's been a long time. It's just Evelyn now, I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, solid. And yes, it has been a long time. What happened to you? You were allergic to everything. He laughed. I grew out of most of them. And I stopped being afraid of the world. Sounds like a story. It is. But I'd rather hear yours. He gestured to the seat across from him. I've been following your case. The papers are rooting to get a hold of it. It's not pretty. I sat down, wrapping my hands around a steaming latte I had ordered at the counter. The papers? Why would the papers say about a divorce case? They don't say about the divorce. They say about the trust. The Charleson Trust. Your grandmother was a minor celebrity in the financial world. Everyone knows she had a lot of money and a lot of secrets. When a family member starts fighting over that kind of estate, the tabloids love it. Great. I rubbed my temples. So my mother or Mark leaked it? Probably both. The articles are repainting you as the villain, the spoiled heiress who cut off her poor, struggling family. Poor, struggling, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. My sister drives a Mercedes. My mother's struggling house is a 5-bedroom colonial in the hills. And my husband just got a brand new boat. He bought it last week with money I thought was going to our taxes. Daniel didn't flinch. He just nodded, his eyes steady. I know. That's why I'm here. I know the truth because I know you. I know the kind of person you are. You wouldn't do this unless you had to. I read at him, the words washing over me like warm water. You don't even know me anymore. We haven't spoken in 20 years. No, I don't know the woman you are now, he agreed. But I know the teenager who helped me study for my finals. I know the girl who used to read Shakespeare in the park and make me listen. That girl had a good heart. She was smart. And she was SCA red. You were always SCA red, Evelyn. You were SCA red of failing. You were SCA red of being alone. That's why you stayed with Mark. That's why you gave your mother so much. You were SCA red they'd leave you. He was right. He was more right than he knew. I had spent my entire adult life terrified of being abandoned, of being unloved. I had thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally love me. But they had only seen an opportunity to take more. "What happened to you?" I asked, changing the subject. "What made you become a lawyer?" His expression flickered. "A lot of things. My father died. He left my mother nothing. She was left with a mountain of debt and a house that was falling apart. A lawyer helped us. A good one. He saved our home. I thought, if I could do that for someone else, I'd have done something worthwhile. So I did. I'm sorry about your father. I didn't know. It's okay. It was a long time ago." He read his throat and pulled a manila folder out of his briefcase. "Enough about me. Let's talk about your case. Mar case lawsuit is baseless. You have a prenup." He signed it. He knew the trust was off limits. "He's just trying to scare you. He's trying to drain me." "Exactly. He's hoping you'll settle out of court just to make it go away. He doesn't want a trial. He can't afford a trial. If you force him to take this to court, he'll lose, and he'll have to pay your legal fees." "And what about my family, my mother, my sister?" Daniel pulled out another document. I looked into S.A. Ross Boutique. It's a lost cause. She hasn't turned a profit in 2 years. Her landlord is about to evict her. She's in debt up to her eyeballs. She's going to try to come to you for help, maybe through a public appeal. She'll try to guilt you, play the victim. Don't fall for it." "I won't." "And your mother?" "Elena." His voice reddened slightly. "She's the worst of them. She's not just manipulative. She's been embezzling from the trust for years. I found a pattern. Small amounts, 500 here, 1,000 there. Always in cash. Always untraceable. It's been going on for over a decade." I sat back, absorbing the information. It was overwhelming. But it was also freeing. I had proof. I had a plan. And I had an ally. It was more than I had ever had before. "So what do I do?" I asked. Daniel leaned forward. "First, you give me permission to represent you. I'll file a motion to dismiss MAR case lawsuit. I'll also start digging into the financial records of the trust. I want to see exactly how much your mother and husband have taken. We'll build a case for fraud. Will that hold up in court?" "It might. But more importantly, it will scare them. And when they get scared, they'll make mistakes. They'll try to contact you. They'll try to threaten you. Don't respond. Don't engage. You let them come to me. You stay out of it." It was the same advice my grandmother had given me before she died. "Stay out of the crossfire, Evelyn. They'll destroy each other. Just make sure you're not in the room when it happens." "Okay," I said. "I trust you." He smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Good. Because this is going to get messy." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Daniel filed the motion to dismiss MAR case lawsuit, and the judge granted it within days. MAR case was thrown out. He was ordered to pay my legal fees. He would have to sell his boat. The news made the local paper, and suddenly I was a minor celebrity. People on the street recognized me. Some of them cheered. Others, I suspected, were sent by my mother, who had started to SMR campaign against me on Facebook. Say Ross Boutique closed. I watched the liquidation sale from afar, seeing the absurdly overpriced items go for pennies on the dollar. SA Raw was devastated. She called me, screaming obscenities into the phone, threatening to come to my apartment and finish the job. I hung up on her and blocked her number. The pressure on my mother was the worst. She had been cut off from all of her secret streams of income. She couldn't pay her property taxes. She couldn't pay her GA retainer. The house on the hills was sta rooting to show signs of neglect. The roof was leaking, and the front lawn was dead and brown. She was humiliated. She was desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, I was in my apartment, writing, when I heard a knock at the door. It was a hard, insistent knock. I didn't answer. I knew who it was. I could feel it in my gut. The knocking got louder, more aggressive. Evelyn. Open this door. It was my mother's voice. I know you're in there. I can see your light. I stood up from my desk and walked to the door, slowly. I looked through the peephole. She was standing there, soaking wet, her hair plastered to her head. She wasn't wearing her usual expensive coat. She was wearing a cheap raincoat that was ripped at the seam. She looked terrible. She looked broken. I opened the door a crack. What do you want, Elena? Let me in, Evelyn. We need to talk. I need your help. I'm not giving you any money. It's not about money. She was lying. It was always about money. It's about your sister. She's in trouble. Real trouble. She was arrested for fraud. She was using fake checks. She's in jail, Evelyn. She needs a lawyer. She needs a good lawyer, and I can't afford one. You have to help her. I read at my mother. She wasn't crying. She was trying to cry. But there were no tears. It was just a performance. She was still trying to manipulate me, even now, even with her life falling apart. Ra is my sister, I said, but she's also an adult. She made her own choices. And I didn't forge those checks. She did. You called he a rude little. She lunged for the door, trying to push it open. I reacted instinctively, slamming it shut and locking it. She hammered on the wood, screaming, cursing, calling me every name in the book. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding, and waited for the storm to pass. It took 10 minutes. But eventually, the screaming stopped. I listened. She was crying now. I could hear the soft, broken sobs on the other side of the door. They didn't sound fake. They sounded real. And for a moment, I felt pity for her. She had destroyed her own life, and she had dragged her daughter down with her. But she had done it to herself. I waited until I was sure she had left, then I walked to the window and looked out. She was standing on the curb, looking at my building. She was so small, so pathetic. And then she pulled out her phone and made a call. A minute later, a black car pulled up. She got in. The car drove away. I recognized the car. It was Mark's. My mother had gone to Mark. The two of them were teaming up. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. I need you to find out where my mother is going, I said. She's meeting with Mark. They're planning something. Evelyn, calm down. What happened? I told him everything. The knock, the screaming, the car. He listened without interrupting, and when I was done, he let out a long, slow breath. Okay. I'll look into it. But you need to stay calm. They're trying to rattle you. They want you to make a mistake. Don't give them that satisfaction. I won't. Good. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up and sat down on my couch. My hands were shaking. The fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. But so was the anger. And the anger was stronger. They had taken so much from me. My money, my dignity, my sense of self. They had tried to break me. But I was still standing. And I was not going to let them win. I spent the rest of the night going through my grandmother's journal again. I read every entry, every observation, every warning. She had seen them for what they were. She had known they would try to destroy me. But she had also believed in me. She had believed I could rise above them. That I fell asleep on the couch, the journal clutched to my chest. And for the first time in months, I dreamed of my grandmother. She was sitting in her jardin, her hands covered in soil, and she was smiling at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I knew what she was telling me. She was telling me to keep going. To keep fighting. To never give up. When I woke up, the sun was shining through the window. It was a new day. And I was ready for whatever came next. Daniel called me back the next morning, his voice tight with a tension I hadn't heard before. I found them. They're at a diner on the outskirts of town. Mark and your mother. They've been there for over an hour. What are they talking about? I don't know. I couldn't get close enough to hear. But I saw your mother hand him an envelope. It looked thick. Cash, probably. Cash. My mother was paying Mark. That was new. She had always been the one receiving money, not giving it. The dynamic had shifted. They were pooling their resources, combining their desperation into a single, volatile force. It was exactly what I had been afraid of. Should I be worried? I asked. You should be careful. But don't panic. I've got a surveillance team on them. We'll know if they make any moves. A surveillance team. I had never thought I would need a surveillance team to track my own family. It felt surreal, like a scene from a movie I never wanted to star in. What do you think they're planning? I pressed. Daniel hesitated. I don't want to speculate. But I can tell you this. They're both in a corner. Mark is facing bankruptcy. Your mother is about to lose her house. Desperate people do desperate things. They might try to force a confrontation. They might try to discredit you. They might even try to physically threaten you. I can handle it. I know you can. But I don't want you to handle it alone. I'm going to assign a security detail to you. Just for a few days, until we figure out what they're up to. I route to protest, but he cut me off. It's not negotiable, Evelyn. You're not just fighting for your money anymore. You're fighting for your safety. Let me help you. I relented. Fine. But I'm not staying locked in my apartment. I have things to do. Fair enough. Just let my guy know where you're going. The next few days passed in a blur of cautious normalcy. I went to the gym, I worked on my manuscript, I met with my editor about the short story collection. The security detail was unobtrusive, a plainclothes officer who sat in a parquet car outside my building and followed me at a discreet distance. It was comforting, in a strange way. It reminded me that I wasn't alone. But the waiting was excruciating. I knew my mother and Mark were plotting something. I could feel it in the air, a crackling tension that seemed to follow me everywhere. The phone calls had stopped, the texts had stopped. The silence was louder than the noise had ever been. Then, on Sunday afternoon, everything changed. I was in my apartment, reading, when I heard a commotion outside. Shouting. The sound of a car screeching to a halt. I looked out the window and saw Mark, his face red and contorted with rage, being held back by two police officers. My mother was standing behind him, her arms crossed, her expression stony and unreadable. I ran downstairs. The security detail intercepted me at the front door. Stay back, ma'am. We have it under control. What happened? I demanded. That your ex-husband tried to force his way into the building. He was shouting threats. We had to restrain him. My mother saw me and her eyes narrowed. She pushed past the officers, her heels clicking on the pavement. This is your doing, Evelyn. You pushed him too far. He was just trying to talk to you. Talk to me. He was trying to break down my door. You drove him to it. You took everything from him. I took nothing that was his, I said, my voice calm and steady. He took from me. He stole from me. And now he's facing the consequences. My mother laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. You think you've won. You think this is over. You have no idea what's coming for you. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same lavender scent my grandmother used to. I have a secret, Evelyn. A secret that will destroy you. You think you're the victim in this story. You're wrong. You're the villain. And everyone is going to know it. I didn't flinch. What secret? Your grandmother's will, she said, her voice dripping with venom. It's not what you think. She left something to me, something that proves she didn't trust you. She knew you were weak. She knew you would fail. And she left me the power to take it all back. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. A secret? Well, it was possible. My grandmother had been a shrewd businesswoman. She had kept many secrets. But I had read her journal. I had seen her final instructions. There was no mention of a second will. You're lying, I said. Am I? She pulled a folded piece of paper out of her purse and waved it in front of me. This is a copy. A legal, binding document. It names me as the sole beneficiary of a separate trust. A trust your grandmother set up years ago, without your knowledge. It holds the rest of her estate. The real estate, the stocks, the liquid assets. Everything you thought was yours, it belongs to me. I read at the paper. I couldn't read the words from where I was standing, but I saw the seal, the legal formatting. It looked authentic. It looked terrifying. You're bluffing, I repeated, but my voice wavered. I guess you'll find out when the lawyers get involved. And trust me, Evelyn, they will. I'm going to take you to court, and I'm going to take everything. You'll be left with nothing. Just like you left me. She turned and walked back to Mark, who was still struggling against the officers. She said something to him in a low voice, and he stopped fighting. They looked at me, both of them, with the same cold, calculating expression. Then they got into MARKCAR and drove away. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking. The security officer asked if I was okay. I nodded, but I wasn't. I felt like the ground had opened up beneath my feet. A second will, a separate trust. It was possible. My grandmother had been a complicated woman. She had loved me, but she had also been cautious. She had never trusted anyone completely. Maybe she had hedged her bets. Maybe she had left a backup plan in case I failed. But I hadn't failed. I was fighting. I was winning. And I wasn't going to let my mother destroy me with a piece of paper. I went back upstairs and called Daniel. I told him everything, my voice shaking but my resolve firm. He listened in silence, and when I was done, he let out a long breath. Okay. This changes things. But it doesn't change the end game. If your mother has a legal document, we need to see it. We need to verify its authenticity. It could be a forgery. A forgery. Your mother is desperate. She's capable of anything. She could have fabricated this to scare you. We need to find the original will. Do you have any idea where it might be? I thought about it. My grandmother's safety deposit box had only contained her journal. But she had also had a private safe at home, hidden behind a painting in her study. I remembered it from my childhood. She had shown it to me once, a small, unassuming metal box. There's a safe at the old house, I said. Behind a painting in the study. I haven't been there in years. But I think the will might be in there. Then we go there tomorrow, Daniel said. I'll come with you. We'll find that will, and we'll find out the truth. The next morning, we drove to my grandmother's house. It was a sprawling Victorian on the edge of town, a place filled with memories and shadows. The paint was peeling, the garden was overgrown, and the windows were dark and empty. It had been empty since my grandmother's death, too painful for anyone to sell, too expensive for anyone to maintain. Daniel parked on the street and we walked up the driveway together. The front door was locked, but I had a key. I had kept it all these years, a small, sentimental token of my grandmother's love. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of lavender. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. The furniture, the rugs, the portraits on the walls. It was a time capsule, frozen in the moment of my grandmother's death that I walked through the house, my footsteps echoing on the wooden floors. I felt like a ghost, haunting a place that no longer belonged to me. But I kept walking, driven by a need to find the truth. We reached the study. The painting was still there, a landscape of a field of sunflowers. I walked over to it and lifted it off the wall. Behind it was the safe, small and unassuming, just as I remembered. Can you open it? Daniel asked. I know the combination. My birthday. She always used my birthday for everything. I knelt down and spun the dial. The safe clicked open. Inside, there was a stack of documents. I pulled them out, my hands trembling. Bank statements, property deeds, and at the bottom, a sealed envelope. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a legal document, the same formatting my mother had shown me. A separate trust, naming her as the sole beneficiary. Read it. I felt my heart sink. It was real. My grandmother had set up a separate trust. She had left my mother a backup plan, a safety net in case I failed. But as I read further, the document revealed something else. A clause. A condition that Helena Charlezin shall be entitled to the full proceeds of this trust only upon the condition that she has not knowingly and willfully defrauded the Primary Trust, managed by Evelyn Charlezin. If fraud is proven, this secondary trust shall revert to the Primary Trust, to be managed solely by Evelyn Charlezin. I read the clause again, my heart pounding. My grandmother had anticipated everything. She had known my mother might try to steal from me. She had built a trap into the will, a trap that would spring if my mother's fraud was ever proven. Daniel, I whispered. Look at this. He read the document, his eyes widening. This is brilliant. Your grandmother was a genius. She made the will conditional. Your mother can only inherit if she's clean. But she's not clean. We have proof of her embezzlement. This document is our Trump CA road. I laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. She thought she had me. She thought she was going to take everything. But she was wrong. She was so wrong. We need to act fast, Daniel said. We need to file this in court before she can do anything with it. Once we prove she's guilty of fraud, the secondary trust reverts to you. She gets nothing. I nodded, clutching the document to my chest. The battle was far from over. My mother would fight back. She would try to weasel her way out of it. But now I had the ammunition I needed. I had the truth. And I was going to win. The court date arrived faster than I expected. The morning was gray and cold, the kind of November day that seeped into your bones. I stood outside the courthouse with Daniel at my side, clutching a leather briefcase that contained everything we needed. The original will, the forensic audit of my mother's embezzlement, the copies of Mark's forged loan documents, and the proof of S.A. Ross' fraudulent checks. I had spent the last 2 weeks preparing, organizing, and steeling myself for this moment. "Ready?" Daniel asked. "I've been ready my whole life," I said. That we walked inside. The courthouse was a grand, imposing building with marbly floors and high ceilings that echoed with the sound of footsteps. The courtroom was already half full when we arrived. Reporters sat in the back row, their notebooks ready. My mother was at the plaintiff's table, flanked by a lawyer I didn't recognize. Mark was seated behind her, his face a mask of concealed fury. S.A. Ra was there too, looking pale and thin, her designer clothes hanging off her frame like borrowed costumes. My mother turned when I walked in. Her eyes were cold, calculating. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just read at me, her gaze burning with hatred. That I took my seat at the defendant's table, Daniel beside me. The judge entered, a stern-faced woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She looked over the courtroom, her gaze lingering on the reporters, and then she called the hearing to order. "That this is a matter regarding the Charleston Family Trust," she said. "The plaintiff, Elena Charleston, is petitioning the court to invalidate the Prima Re Trust and enforce a second Re Trust naming her as the sole beneficiary. The defendant, Evelyn Charleston, is contesting this petition. Let's hear the arguments." My mother's lawyer stood up. He was a slick, silver-tongued man with an expensive suit and a practiced smile. He laid out my mother's case with theatrical precision. He claimed that I had mismanaged the Prima Re Trust, that I had squandered the money on frivolous expenses, and that my grandmother had foreseen my incompetence and created the second Re Trust as a Safague road. I listened to his arguments, my hands folded on the table. My heart was pounding, but my face remained impassive. I had prepared for this. I had known they would try to paint me as a failure, as a spoiled heiress who didn't deserve the legacy. When the lawyer finished, the judge turned to Daniel. "Mr. C.A. Reuter, your response." Daniel stood up, calm and composed. He walked to the center of the courtroom and addressed the judge in a clear, measured voice. "Your Honor, the plaintiff's case is built on a foundation of lies. My client, Evelyn Charleston, has managed the Prima Re Trust with integrity and diligence. The plaintiff, Elena Charleston, has systematically defrauded the trust for over a decade, embezzling funds through a series of cash withdrawals and hidden accounts." He held up the forensic audit. "I have here a complete financial record of the plaintiff's activities. The amounts are small individually, but collectively, they total over $200,000. This money was stolen from the trust that was meant to support Evelyn Charleston. The plaintiff's claim that my client is incompetent is not only false, it's a projection of her own failures." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. My mother's face went pale. She grabbed her lawyer's arm and whispered something urgently. He stood up and objected. "Your Honor, this is hearsay. There is no proof that my client took any money improperly." Daniel turned to him, his eyes sharp. "I have proof. I have bank statements, transaction records, and sworn testimony from a forensic accountant. I also have this." He pulled out the second will, the one we had found in my grandmother's safe. The second Re Trust includes a clause that states the plaintiff is only entitled to the proceeds if she has not committed fraud against the Prima Re Trust. The evidence of her fraud is undeniable. Therefore, the second Re Trust reverts to Evelyn Charleston. The judge took the document and read it fully. The courtroom was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I watched my mother's face as the judge read the clause. Her composure shattered. Her hands were shaking. She knew she had been caught. "Is this document authentic?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Daniel said. "It was found in the deceased's personal safe, alongside the Prima Re Trust documents. It was signed and witnessed in accordance with state law." My mother's lawyer tried to argue, but the judge cut him off. Mr. Thompson, your client's fraud has been documented. The clause in the second A trust is clear. I am ruling in favor of the defendant. The second A trust is invalid, and the prima trust remains under the management of Evelyn Charleson. Any funds that were fraudulently obtained by the plaintiff must be returned. My mother stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is a joke, she shouted. You can't do this. That will is a forgery. My mother never wrote that. Your Honor, Daniel said, the plaintiff is in contempt of court. She is shouting false accusations and disrupting the proceedings. The judge slammed her gavel. Order. I will have order in this courtroom. Mrs. Charleson, if you continue to disrupt these proceedings, I will hold you in contempt. I suggest you take your seat. My mother didn't take her seat. She stood there, trembling with rage. You can't do this to me, she spat. I am her mother. I raised her. I gave her everything. And she repays me by destroying my life. I stood up. I had been silent for too long. I walked to the center of the courtroom, facing my mother. The reporters leaned forward, their pens poised. You didn't raise me, I said. You manipulated me. You stole from me. You used me as a bank account to fund your lifestyle and S.A. Ross failures. You lied to me about my father. You lied to me about the GA dinner. You lied to me about every single thing that came out of your mouth. My mother's face contorted. How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you? I shot back. You stood in a hospital room, signing away the last of my grandmother's estate while I was too weak to fight back. You destroyed me. But I'm not destroyed. I'm here. And I'm going to win. She lunged at me. It happened so fast, the shift from rage to action. Her hands reached for my throat, her nails scraping against my skin. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The judge was shouting. The bailiffs were rushing forward. Daniel grabbed my arm and pulled me back, putting himself between me and my mother. She was restrained. Her lawyer was shouting. The reporters were snapping photos. But I didn't see about any of that. I was looking at my mother, at the woman who had given birth to me, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, no pity. Just a cold, clean emptiness. She had finally shown her true face to the world. And the world was watching. The judge restored order. My mother was led away in handcuffs, charged with contempt of court and assault. The hearing was concluded. Daniel and I walked out of the courtroom together, the reporters trailing behind us, their questions echoing in the marble halls. Miss Charleson, how do you feel? One of them asked. Relieved, I said. And ready to move on. I went home that night to an empty apartment. The silence was different this time. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace. I had won. I had survived. And I had finally broken free of the chains that had bound me for so long. The next few weeks were a blur of legal follow-ups and personal revelations. Mark's fraud was exposed. His loans were invalidated. He was facing his own legal battles, lawsuits from creditors and former business partners. He had tried to contact me, leaving voicemails full of apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I deleted them without listening. There was nothing he could say that would make me forget what he had done. S.A. Ra was released on bail, but her legal troubles were far from over. The fraud charges against her were serious. She was facing prison time. She had tried to call me, to beg me to help her, to speak on her behalf. I had refused. I had learned my lesson. S.A. Ra was a grown woman. She had made her own choices. She would have to face her own consequences. My mother's situation was the most complicated. She had been released from custody, but her reputation was ruined. The SMER campaign she had launched against me had backfired. ROI. The evidence of her fraud had been made public, and she was now a pariah in her own social circles. Her friends had abandoned her. Her neighbors had stopped speaking to her. She was alone, broken, and destitute. She showed up at my door one evening, a few weeks after the trial. She was thinner, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. She didn't look like my mother anymore. She looked like a stranger. Evelyn, she said, her voice small and fragile. I need your help. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. Please. Please don't turn me away. I looked at her, standing on my doorstep in the cold November rain. She was a shadow of the woman who had terrorized me for so many years. And for a moment, I felt a flicker of something. Not forgiveness. Not love. But a distant, detached pity. I can't help you, Elena, I said. I can't give you money. I can't give you a home. You destroyed those bridges yourself. I was wrong, she said. I was so wrong. I know that now. Please, Evelyn. I'm your mother. You can't just abandon me. You abandoned me, I said. You abandoned me a long time ago. You just didn't realize it. I closed the door. I heard her crying on the other side, but I didn't open it again. I walked to my desk, sat down, and opened my laptop. I had a manuscript to finish. I had a life to live. And I wasn't going to let my past define my future. Months passed. The scars of the battle began to heal. I finished my manuscript and found a publisher. The short story collection became a modest success, reviewed favorably in small literary magazines. It was a quiet triumph, but it was mine. Daniel and I stayed in touch. We were friends, close friends, the kind of friends who understood each other without needing to explain. There was something between us, an unspoken connection that we both knew was there but neither of us rushed to define. We had time. We had patience. And we had each other. The holidays came and went. I spent Christmas alone, by choice. I made myself a simple dinner, put on my grandmother's favorite record, and sat by the window watching the snow fall. It was the first peaceful Christmas I had had in years. In January, I received a letter. It was from a lawyer, representing my mother. She was being evicted from her house. She had no money, no assets, and no prospects. She was being forced to move into a state-funded facility for seniors. The letter was a final plea, a request for me to intervene, to offer her a lifeline. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and closed it. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I had given my mother every chance. I had given her years of my life, years of my money, years of my emotional energy. And she had taken all of it and used it against me. I was done. The final chapter of my story wasn't about revenge. It was about liberation. It was about realizing that I didn't need my family's approval to be whole. I didn't need their love to be valid. I had my grandmother's legacy, my own strength, and a future that was entirely my own. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The skyline was glittering, the lights of the buildings twinkling in the dusk. The world was full of possibilities. And I was finally ready to explore them. A knock came at the door. I turned, surprised. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked over and opened it. Daniel was standing there, a bottle of wine in his hand and a warm smile on his face. I was in the neighborhood, he said. Thought I'd see if you wanted company. I smiled back. It was a real smile, a smile that reached my eyes and touched my soul. "I'd like that," I said. "Come in." He stepped inside, and I closed the door behind him. The evening stretched out before us, full of promise and possibility. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.